Hello everybody, I'm David Bird. Welcome to Halfspin, where we talk about the sport of knife throwing. Today I want to talk about the SOG Fling Throwing Knives. I've been curious about these knives for a while, so I finally picked up a set and tested them out. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the SOG Fling. The Fling is a solid stainless steel knife. It is a spear point throwing knife. They come wrapped in paracord. Here's what it looks like if you unwrap that paracord, and they come with a nylon sheath. The build quality is good. They feel solid. They have a good weight to them. They're nice to throw, and they feel nice in the hands. I want to jump right into talking about the paracord. So it looks nice. When you get 3 knives that are wrapped in this paracord, it's a good color. They look cool. But usually wrapping a throwing knife in paracord is a bad idea. It's a bad idea for a few reasons. One of the reasons is it's not going to last. When the handle is hitting things when you throw it, you're going to eventually tear, rip, or split that paracord, and so it's not going to last that long. Fortunately, the SOG Fling looks good without the paracord. So it's not a bad thing that it comes wrapped in paracord, just don't expect it to last. The problem with having the paracord on that handle depends on your throwing style. If you want to throw full spin or no spin, the paracord really gets in the way. The way that the paracord is tied, there's this large knot right here, and so when you throw it no spin, your hand will hit that knot, causing it to lose its flight. It'll lose its angle when you hit that knot. Same thing goes for full spin. When I throw full spin, that knot hits my hand, which causes it to lose its rotation. And so if you want to throw no spin or you want to throw full spin, it's best if you just go ahead and take off the paracord. And so that's what I did, and that's why I took that off of this one, is because I wanted to throw all styles. And while throwing this no spin and full spin, I was doing a terrible job until I took off the paracord. As soon as I took off the paracord, the knife did great full spin and no spin. If you only throw half spin by the blade, the paracord doesn't get in the way at all. And so if you throw military half spin, if you throw it this way, the paracord's not in the way. If you throw traditional half spin like this, it's not in the way. And if you throw instinctive half spin, it's not in the way. And so if you really like the paracord and you like half spin, it's not a big deal at all. It'll eventually rip and tear, just accept that it'll eventually come off. You can put on your own paracord after that. This is an easy tie and an easy wrap, and so you can constantly replace that if you want. But if half spin's not what you want, the paracord's gonna have to come off eventually. I've also seen some people who really like the paracord, but they say the same thing about the knot, and so they've modified the paracord. If you can find a way to tie this paracord in a way to where you don't have a knot at the end, then that would work great. Some things that I've seen is people like undo the knot and they tie the strings down and then they melt it all together. That seems like a mess. Or they glue it down so that way it's out of the way. I think it's easier just to get rid of the paracord. There's also a silly problem with the color of the paracord. So earth tone paracord sounds like a good idea. I mean, it's pretty until you throw it into a pile of leaves. Oh boy. And it took me 3 days to find it. I had to come back with a metal detector to eventually find the third knife. So is the fact that the SOG Fling comes with paracord a bad thing?
Dad, my bracelet's broken. Can you get me a new one? Thank you, Daddy.
Thanks for the paracord, SOG. So SOG is not going to lose any points for wrapping it in paracord. All you got to do is take it off, and you got some free paracord. So it's not a big deal. It does not affect the knife. because you can just take it off. So in a way, it's an optional thing. Before I move on, I do want to talk about one of the huge benefits of the paracord for me is the sound reverberation. The paracord on the knife really silences the knife when it's hitting or when you're missing and it's ricocheting. Once you take that paracord off, the knives become much louder when they're hitting their target. And so if you throw indoors, you'll appreciate the muffled sound that the paracord gives you. Okay, so how do they throw? Well, they're fun to throw. Like I said, they feel good in the hands. I really enjoy the fact that the blade is solid. Some of the companies that make these spear point knives usually have cutouts in the middle of the blade for some reason. Having the solid blade feels nice. It feels really good in the hand. The SOG knives, they just feel nice. A downside and criticism about the blade though is that it's wider than some of the spear point knives out there, and so it's got kind of this spade kind of shape to it. And because it's wider, you have to throw it with a little bit more force in order to get it to stick. When I was testing these out, if I threw it against some harder wood, it would hit right on the point and bounce off. And that's because the point is a little bit more spread out, a little bit more spade-like than some of the other pointier spear points. And so I wouldn't recommend this knife for a beginner knife thrower. When you're beginning, it's really nice to get a knife that sticks well because then you'll feel good about your skills. If you're not sticking the knife, you're gonna get frustrated. And so these take a little bit more force to get to stick than some of the more pointier spear points. Some of you are probably going to ask about the sharpness of the blade. It is not sharp, it is a false edge, which a throwing knife should be. And so I said that these knives don't stick as well as some other knives, but that doesn't mean I want to sharpen it. I normally don't like sharpened throwing knives, and so I feel like the sharpness of this is correct. It feels good. It's the way it should be. It doesn't hurt my hand at all throwing it. It is a perfect amount of sharpness. But if you sharpened it, yes, it would stick more. It would stick easier, but I think it's mainly because of the wider spear point on the blade. So throwing styles. Again, I liked it half spin, military half spin, it sticks pretty well. Traditional half spin, it sticks well when you're hitting end grain. If you hit vertical grain, sometimes it bounces off when you're throwing half spin unless you use a lot of force on it. Full spin, it threw well, it rotated well. It's a little bit small for full spin, but it did rotate well. And for no spin, I found that you have to throw it with a lot of force again to get it to stick. It is a little light for me and a little bit more blade heavy for no spin. So I wouldn't recommend these for someone who wants to start off with no spin or is really a no spin thrower. I think these are a good half spin knife. After throwing these for a month, the style that I found the best for throwing the SOG Fling was instinctive half spin. If you don't know what instinctive half spin looks like, it's where you pinch the blade like a normal half spin, but you're gonna put your index finger up the spine of it. And so you throw it like this and then it'll come out of your hand. It'll do a half a rotation. And so throwing it instinctive feels really good. It's because of that solid flat blade. It's an easy grip. It feels nice. And throwing it instinctive half spin felt really good. And so I would use these as an instinctive half spin knife. But that's just what I'm going to choose to use these for. And if you do that, the paracord's not in the way at all. It still feels really good with the paracord. And so I'm going to leave the paracord on the other two, and I'm going to use these as an instinctive half spin throwing knife. So if you're considering the SOG Fling and you want to know who these are for and what they do well, I wouldn't get these if I was a no spin thrower, if I wanted to learn no spin. I wouldn't get these if I was just starting out with knife throwing just because it takes a little bit more force to get them to stick. I'd find a knife that sticks a little bit easier than that. But if you've been throwing for a little while, this is a fun knife to get, especially for half spin. Recommendations to SOG. Hey, I love the solid blade. I wish it had a solid handle. I like heavier throwing knives. I don't see any point in having this cut out here other than to wrap the paracord around, and I don't really need the paracord anyway. I would love to see a SOG Fling model that was a solid blade with a solid handle, just a solid, nice piece of stainless steel for throwing. As far as the spear point on it, it works fine as long as I'm giving it some force, but it could be a little pointier. But I wouldn't ask SOG to change the design of the blade. It would work better if it was pointier, but what I would ask is a solid blade and a solid handle, and you'd have a really fun throwing knife. I hope this answered any questions you might have about the SOG Fling. If you have other questions, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to check out my other videos on using the SOG Fling. I'll see you guys next time.